Hill here. There is no better way to share a story than around a campfire. And if you are in the Mobile Bay area, there is no better place to get firewood than our friends at Mobile Bay Firewood. This is a family-owned business, and I personally love using their easy-to-light, kiln-dried firewood in my fire pit. So use promo code MBFTSO for $15 off of your next order at mobilebayfirewood.com. Longtime friends of the podcast, the Growley Leather Company is a family-owned leather goods company in southern Alabama. All of their leather goods are designed and handcrafted to come alongside you in your daily life, share in your adventures, and reflect your character. Brian and I both enjoy products from Growley Leather. So visit growleyleather.com and use promo code TSO2022 for a 15% discount at checkout. Find you a leather journal and fill it with stories from the storied outdoors. This is the Storied Outdoors, a podcast somewhere between Lewis and Tolkien and Lewis and Clark, finding clarity in the stories we tell and the adventures that shape us. Welcome to the Storied Outdoors. My name is Brad Hill, and I'm joined by my good friend, my pal, Brian Gill, and we are so excited today to have Joe Monaghan from Angler's Coffee joining us today for a conversation all the way from Washington State. I assume that's where you are today. Joe is out in Washington. You've retired from a career in coffee, which is awesome. I love coffee so much, which I'm excited to get into in this conversation. You've done a lot of things from roasting to machine development and sales. And so you began at Seattle's Best as a roaster, and you've continued this career in this world of coffee, which is incredible. But coupled with your love for coffee, you also have a deep connection and a love for the sport of fly fishing. And so you've joined those two things together, and I really look forward to hearing the story of that. You and I connected over social media through a giveaway that I was so excited to, I always try, you tag and you're like, yeah, man, maybe I win, maybe I won't. But man, I won, and I won a bunch of coffee, and I won this awesome, if you're watching on YouTube, I won this incredible coffee cup and some bags of coffee and some reel covers. And I think in the background there, I got my bag. My bag came in from, over there at Alpine Leisure, and the folks at Alpine Leisure. So really, really cool community of friends. And so you and I have chatted a couple of times, and that's what drew us together to this conversation today. There was one thing I loved from y'all's website, Joe. It says, for Angler's Coffee founder Joe Monaghan, life has always been about seeking perfection, not because he expects to attain it, rather the joy is in the journey toward it. To Joe, that makes fly fishing and coffee his perfect passions. So thank you for joining us. And I want to get into what does that mean for you today? But thank you for joining us, man.
Oh, great. Thanks for having me. Happy to be here. And I can assure the audience that you won that fair and square. There was no insider deal on that
one. Yeah, we became friends after I got free stuff.
Yep, for sure.
Yeah. And Brad was gracious enough to share some of the dry dropper with me. So I'm very appreciative.
And one of the reel covers. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Great. We've been enjoying the dry dropper, which is the instant coffee. I keep some of that in my fly bag now at all times.
Well, we go to great lengths to not call it instant coffee, Brad, because it's actually real coffee steeped in a tea bag. And
there you go.
So,
well, you can totally tell that. You can tell. I mean, it is a solid cup of coffee.
Yeah, I was a bit of a skeptic myself, and I was pleasantly surprised to find out how good it really could be.
Yeah.
So, Joe, you're in Washington State. I have a funny story. I was fly fishing in Montana with a guide on the in Kalispell, and I asked the guide. I said, "Man, what's your favorite place to fly fish?" this guy's in Montana. It's a
Like
beautiful
Mecca for fly fishing.
He's like, without hesitation, he said Washington State. And so it has a reputation for sure of being one of the premier places in the United States to trout fish and fly fish. How often do you get to go? Is that a daily thing for you? Is that part of your regular routine? Tell us a little bit about your fly fishing.
Well, I wish it was a daily routine. Washington's famous for fly fishing, primarily particularly here on the west side of this state, primarily for the steelhead runs and the Olympic Peninsula especially, which is an amazing fishing experience. Unfortunately, the runs, like a lot of places, are dwindling, and the sport is becoming more challenging. There's a lot of work being done to try to restore the runs, but that's probably why your buddy in Montana was so favorable for Washington. I do fish frequently. I live on an island, kind of in a very rural area, which is a whole nother story we can get into as part of my so-called retirement. But I live here in a rural place on an island in Puget Sound, just north of Seattle a ways. And just right in my own backyard here, I have some excellent stillwater fishing, a couple of great lakes with some nice big fat rainbows in there. But also we get out on the beaches, another 5 minutes away from home, and we can fish from the beach or from a boat offshore for sea run cutthroat trout virtually all year round. We fish for bull trout here. That's coming up, really exciting time. And it's really exciting to see those things come after a popper fly. And then we have the salmon runs in the summertime, which can also be fish with a fly really, really successfully. So,
well, that just
get
all
out
sounds
often,
terrible.
but not daily.
Man, what so in the intro we talked about a career in the coffee industry. What drew you into coffee initially?
Well, like a lot of things, some of it was being in the right place at the right time. I spent my younger years in the Spokane area on the east side of the state, but my family moved to the Seattle area when I was a young adolescent and grew up here. And one of my high school buddies, best friends in high school, when we graduated together, I was dumb enough to go off to college, and he was smart enough to go into business with his older brother. And when I got out of school with kind of a worthless English arts degree, I needed a job. And by that time, my friend's company, which was roasting coffee, had grown to a point where they needed some help, particularly in trying to sell coffee to the Seattle area restaurants. This was in the mid 70s, and they were competing with another little tiny company here in the Seattle area called Starbucks. And so
may have heard of.
So I was dumb enough to think I could do that, and I started selling coffee for them and learning how to roast coffee. And as you mentioned earlier, Brad, that company is what evolved into being Seattle's best coffee. Very early on, I realized that I really loved it. It was a real special thing. And as you mentioned earlier also, just allowed infinite possibilities for pursuing perfection, because there's a gazillion variables involved with coffee. Along the way, I had the fortunes of selling coffee to a little restaurant in Seattle, where the owner of the restaurant happened to have an old non-functioning commercial espresso machine in it. And one day he asked me if I knew how these things worked. Of course, I didn't have a clue, but we decided to dive into it a bit, and both became fascinated with this particular style of making coffee, or Italian style. So we got a little bit more and more interested in the machine side of things. And one day we got the brilliant idea that maybe we could actually sell them. We wrote a few companies in Italy to see if we might be able to import some machines. And a couple of them responded, and we headed off to Italy on a wild goose chase, and came back being able to represent a couple of lines of them. one of them being a tiny boutique company out of Florence, Italy called La Marzocco, that we, and to try to make a long story short, a 40-year story short, which I'm not very good at to begin with, we slowly grew the business, and along the way started selling machines to Starbucks. Now we're up into the late 80s, early 90s, and kind of hit pay dirt with them a bit in the sense that they were growing fast. This was the era where Starbucks was starting to become what we now see them as, and we succeeded with them. And one day we went to the owner of La Marzocco, who we'd become great friends with, and another fishing guy, by the way, who recently passed away. But we told him we had this great news that we were going to grow with Starbucks. And he kind of looked at us and said, "No, I'm not interested in growing anymore. I have this beautiful lifestyle in Tuscany, and you just have to go back and tell them we can't build any more machines for them," which didn't seem like a good idea to us either. So again, to make a long story short, we kind of got forced into acquiring the company in Italy. It wasn't at that time, didn't think of it as an opportunity. It was more of a necessity. So we worked out a deal and we bought the company and figured out a way to add to the production. And somehow or another, in spite of ourselves, over the next 30 plus years, we turned it into essentially the world's leading brand of commercial espresso machines, particularly for the specialty coffee industry. So I loved every minute of it. But, as I started to get older, I thought about retiring. And I'm the kind of person that can love what I'm doing and then kind of put it behind me and move on to the next journey, which I thought was retirement. And, I thought to myself, all those years of working so hard, all I could think about was fishing. So I finally had time to get out and fish quite a bit, and I couldn't stop thinking about business. I was addicted to I'm addicted to not the money side of business. I could actually care less about the money. It's more about the act of succeeding, the act of taking an idea and making it into something, building a community along the way, creating great relationships. That's what excites me about business. So I decided, what the heck, I'll try to combine these two things that I love, both of them, and turn it into something. And that gave birth to Angler's Coffee.
I love that you said you're building a community. Yeah. And that's one thing that Brad and I love about this podcast, that we've been able to find a community of like-minded people who love outdoors, and they love telling stories, and they love, a lot of our guests and a lot of our listeners love fishing. Not everybody, but that's a big part of Brad and my life. Just kind of what we like to do on the pastime. What's one of the earlier memories of fly fishing for you?
Well, as I mentioned, my early life, I've spent in the Spokane area of Washington, and my father, who was born and raised on the Bitterroot River in Montana, he grew up fishing, fly fishing a little bit, and later in his life, and he was in love with it. So we spent a good deal of our family vacations, and he and I would go out fishing together all the way up until the time when he just couldn't fish anymore before he finally passed away. But so he really drove it into me, and he wasn't the most patient teacher. He loved fishing so much. He wasn't always patient with me and untangling my lines out of the trees. But I have great memories of he and I fishing together as in the early days. I still think of him often when I'm out casting a line.
Man, that's so special. I always remember my dad. Every time I would cast into a tree, he'd always ask me, "Are you fishing for squirrels?" I passed that one on to my kids a couple of weeks ago, and they got a kick out of that.
Oh, well, my dad might have thrown in a few words that I probably can't repeat here.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Not so kid friendly.
Not so kid friendly. Yeah. Let's keep it family friendly.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah. That was we asked this question of of another guy, and that's going to be coming up. Well, I don't want to give it away because I think your episode's going to air before his episode, so I want to keep a little suspense, a little foreshadowing. But I did ask him about, what was the over under on, because he's been fly fishing a really, really long time. What's the over under on the amount of knots that he's untangled him that he made? Not even his kids that he's had, and it was really funny and then also encouraging because he said he wasn't very patient with you. I'm usually not very patient with myself either. Whenever I'm fishing for squirrels.
Oh, I get it for sure. Me either.
Oh gosh, so many. Well, recently this kind of theme's been coming up in our conversations on the podcast, and we've kind of gravitated to asking this question as we love sitting around the fire, fishing especially, and coffee bring stories out of people. When you're sitting in a coffee shop and you're sharing community or you're sharing life, or you're sitting around a fire with a cup of coffee with a group of guys, and fishing is tied. There's a lot of stories. So maybe we can get your English degree to resurface in storytelling. Joe, what's up? If you're sitting around the fire, like right now, we call this podcast sort of a digital fireplace, and where we get to share some stories with people. What's a particular adventure or experience? Maybe it's fishing, maybe it's not, but something in the outdoors that you've spent some time reflecting on that you would say, this is something that I would tell, if I were sitting around the fire, that this was a great lesson or a great thing that I would like to pass on.
Oh gosh, Brad, there's so many. Kind of on the story I do tell often, a bit on the humorous side, is I was out fishing with another fairly well-known guy in the coffee business, a guy named David Schomer, and we've been fishing buddies for a number of years. He's pretty well known in the industry, and we're going fishing together again here in a few weeks. But we were out fishing on the Yakima River one time, and the fishing happened to be particularly good. And I was in the middle of a cast and got a great hit from a nice big fat rainbow, and I hooked him, and all of a sudden I felt this sharp pain in my left leg, and David's upriver for me going, I got one. Unfortunately, he had me, so somehow or another we managed to unhook myself from him and land the fish at the same time. Wow. That was we had a lot of fun with that.
Small feat.
Yeah, so I tell that one within the coffee industry a lot, but there's so many stories. And those where I've been able to combine business with fishing have been some of my favorites. One of them being we had a La Marzocco board meeting scheduled in New Zealand, in Auckland, New Zealand.
Oh, that's just too bad.
And I was excited about. I'd never been to New Zealand. I certainly always had it on my bucket list for fishing. So. But didn't really know what to expect. And one of the guys I was meeting had good connections with some people that fish. So I flew the 15 or 16 hours to Auckland or however long it takes, and got off the plane. And there was a smiling face greeting me there as a friend. We jumped in the car, and within 4 hours, I was up in the Lake Taupo region fishing a river with no sleep. And just did some amazing fishing there. And at the end of the day, we were down on the beach in the sun cooking in a barbecue. The diversity was just blew me away how much I was able to do. So that's also one of my favorite stories.
Man, that I've never been to New Zealand. That's one on my bucket list, though.
It should be. It's an amazing place.
Yeah, I mean, it's staggeringly beautiful because, I mean, obviously, in the intro, we talk about it being a podcast somewhere between Lewis and Tolkien, and those movies, the Lord of the Rings movies, were filmed all there. And you just see the majesty of New Zealand in those films, and those massive aerial shots of the landscapes there, just unbelievable.
Yeah, I was lucky enough to also a couple of days later take a helicopter trip down to the South Islands, or do some helicopter fishing on the South Islands, and the amazing fishing is only surpassed by the amazing beauty of the scenery. I mean, it's just insane.
Joe, do you have a trophy trout? Do you have some? Do you have one that you've that your personal best?
Uh, well, I've caught them in all sizes and shapes, in different styles. Probably the one I'm most proud of. I mean, winter run fly fishing for steelhead, or fly fishing for winter run steelhead, is particularly challenging, and I've had far more failures than success. But I was able to land a 19-pound buck steelhead after, and that was about an hour-long battle and a lot of running downstream and chasing him and getting him out of logs. And
Mm,
I didn't think I had a prayer of landing that fish about 5 times, but managed to get him in. You know, it was a beauty.
golly, 19 pounds. My goodness.
Yeah, it was my biggest one by far on a fly.
Oh, that's incredible. Now, was that a spay rod?
No, no, that was before my days of spay. It was on a 9 weight overhand rod. And
Wow,
I have
incredible.
taken up spay fishing. I was able to go to, and again, combining another business trip to Norway a few years ago, and did some spay casting there. And I, I got hooked on that, but I have a lot to learn. That's a whole nother skill.
And seeing a video, I'll be scrolling on Instagram and I'll see some of these slow motion videos of these guys. It looks amazing. Just poetry and beauty. And man, it's incredible. And then that, just be a wad of line, at their feet. It just disappears, at the end of that rod. Man, that thing must create some serious energy when you cast it.
It's crazy. I took some lessons and did a lot of practicing and went to Norway thinking I was going to impress some people, and I got schooled real fast by some experts.
I could imagine the learning curve is pretty steep on casting that.
It could be.
That's cool.
So let's talk a lot about Angler's Coffee. I mean, first of all, Brad and I, we've talked about this before. The branding, the marketing, everything about it is laser focused and it is brilliant. You guys are doing a phenomenal job. Every time I pass your Instagram feed, I stop. It draws me in. The names of the coffees, the logo, everything about it is really intentional. Can you talk a little bit about just your vision for this?
Well, sure. First of all, I owe credit to the branding, which I also agree is top notch, and that's a partnership I have with a relative of mine. I guess you'd call him my nephew-in-law. He's married to my niece, and he's a branding specialist. And I had worked with him several times in my prior career. He helped us out with a lot of things at La Marzocco, and we'd always toyed with the idea of working together. So for this project, he came in as a full-blown partner, and his name is Ken Barnes, and he's the genius behind the art, the branding, the packaging, those kind of things. And then I'm the type that at least at this point in my life, if I can't do something well, I don't want to do it at all. And so we're pretty picky about how we're going about things. We're certainly learning a lot. We jumped into the world of direct-to-consumer marketing without really knowing a whole lot about it. And again, I've been schooled a few times, and we haven't done everything perfectly. But branding is important to us. Being authentic is important to us, which is why we chose the fly fishing niche as a theme for all of our coffees, at least for the time being. We purposely chose the title Angler's Coffee to be an umbrella for eventually for coffee for all types of anglers. But again, the authenticity is super important to us. And being a lifelong fly fisherman myself, it felt the most natural for us to be able to jump into. So that's their story there.
But you made me think about like the pairing of coffee and fly fishing immediately drew me to Norman McLean making the joke in The River Runs Through It, his novel, A River Runs Through It, about he's making fun of the bait fisherman, and that his brother-in-law was going to show up with a coffee can with worms in it.
Yeah.
I was like, well, not English coffee, man. They're going to be there's his name, the dry fly. So I think maybe McLean would have approved of English coffee and all of its branding.
I would have been honored.
So what you said that you were, I guess you wanted to eventually expand Anglers Coffee to all types of anglers. Is that down the road some?
Oh, for sure. English coffee is certainly a passion project, and as I mentioned, I'm not really in it for the money, but it is a business, and there's some realities of business that have to be applied. And I'm not sure the fly fishing market by itself can sustain a growing business. We'll see. I hope so. I would love it if that were the case. But we're just starting to work on some packaging and some graphics and some themes for the bass fishing community. I'll honestly admit I am not a bass fisherman and would not be able to apply the same level of authenticity. So in order to move into this way, we're going to need to find a partner or some people to partner with that truly understand the market, so that we're not trying to fake it, but it's in the works.
We got a lot of fly fishermen in Alabama. A lot of guys listen to this podcast are fly fishermen, and they fish for bass. Here, especially Matt Lewis. Some of these guys, some of the work that they're doing with the red eye bass, and it behaves much like a brook trout, and so there are definitely some bass anglers here. We have several guide friends, Craig Godwin, Stephen Rockerts. Those guys know bass fishing.
Targeting bass,
yeah, targeting bass. And so, I mean, if you need some connections, we have some people to hook you up with.
That would be great. I'm definitely interested, and I do realize there's some crossover from the fly fishing world into the bass world, and then there's a lot that's outside of that as well. So it's something we have to learn about, but it's something that's definitely on our radar.
I tell you, something I've noticed, and we talked about earlier today with another guest, is the fact that fly fishing has really grown in the past few years as a sport. It's not just relegated to, maybe the wealthy. Is used to be, it was like really older, wealthy folks that fly fish, and sort of a pretentious sport that felt like it was not approachable, but it's become way more approachable, and a whole lot more people that are making it popular, even especially among younger folks. Have you noticed that?
Oh, definitely, and I love to see it. I grew up. We really usually didn't have a couple of pennies to rub together, and yet we still managed to get out fly fishing. And yet the sport kind of took on an elitism tone to it that was unfortunate. And I love to see the movement that's happening where there's growing diversity. There's, at both economic and cultural diversity that's being embraced by fly fishing. And I think that's very healthy. I love to see. In fact, aside from trying to combine my two passions, English Coffee is extremely dedicated to a giving back portion. We're really eager to support organizations of all type, whether it's conservatism or in our case, a lot of more cultural organizations. And one of the great things that's come out of fly fishing, I know I use fly fishing as much for mental reflection and some kind of Zen-like movements, and just a chance to shut my brain down from everything else, even in spite of what I say about business. And I love the fact that there's more growing numbers of organizations that are utilizing fly fishing for therapeutic value, whether it's disadvantaged youth or maybe veterans suffering from some PTSD, all kind, or people with disabilities, and that is a movement that we really strongly support. Currently, we're donating a percentage of all of our sales to an organization called Warriors on the Fly, who are directly supporting veterans with fly fishing activities. So I love all of that stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
go ahead, Brian. I think you may be on the same track that I was thinking.
No, you go ahead. I'll follow you.
I was one of our guests on this season that you're going to be a part of in the fall is a guy named Steve Davis that we met that has an organization similar to what you're talking about. It's called On River Time, and they take students or kids that are on different kids ranches that have been, particularly kids that have experienced abuse in some form, and they take them out to a place that Brian and I have yet to go, but we keep hearing about Idaho, and how we need to go fish in Idaho. But they take these kids to this camp out in Idaho, and they use it for exactly what you said, and that's an opportunity to get out on the river, to be in motion, to be fishing, and to have an experience to really, help them heal and help them navigate their story for what they've gone through. So it's really incredible. There's a lot of those that have popped up too, which is awesome.
There are. I mean, just in our, we just have been in business a little over a year now, and we've supported by donating money to a group called Soul River out of Portland, Oregon, which is combines outings for a combination of veterans and disadvantaged youth, and teaches them how to work together in teams, and utilizes fly fishing and other outdoor excursions. We've supported a group called Fishing's Future in Texas, which is really focused on youth. It's not exclusively fly fishing, but it's a great organization. We have a line of, and we will continue with a line of very special coffees, single origin coffees that we package into what we call Artist Series. Current run is featuring the art on the bag of Derek DeYoung, who's pretty well known in the fly fishing world for his art.
Super talented.
Yeah, super talented. And we were lucky enough to collaborate with him, and $1 out of every one of those bags that we sell goes directly to Casting for Recovery, which is a group that uses fly fishing for therapeutic values in treating women that are recovering from breast cancer. So the spectrum is huge, and the number of organizations that we can support is huge, and I love it.
Man, that is incredible. You're teaching me a lot right now. I'm not familiar with any of these organizations, but they're right along the lines of, the giving back community that we're trying to be a part of. Fly fishing has been a very healing sport for me, and I think Brad too. Recently, in the last few years, we both lost our father. And, fly fishing has been a way for us to kind of remove ourselves and just experience God's creation and this, and kind of connecting with a piece of our past that was really special to us with our dad. And, I read an article years ago, and I cannot find it to save my life, but it talked about the motion of fly casting, and it's engaging your brain just enough to keep your brain active, but it's not so engaging that you're not overthinking, and it's not taxing on your mental capacity. So it's a really sweet spot of that. This fly fishing kind of brings you into this state of reflection just naturally, and you're able to relax and to heal. And I don't know, it was really fascinating. The neurology part of it was really neat, and I think that's probably why a lot of these places use fly fishing as a means.
I'm sure you're right, Brian. The way it was described to me from a neurological perspective was that the physical act of casting and the rhythmic act of casting combined with the targeting the fly, observing the fly, trying to position the fly where you think a fish might be, it actually crosses the hemispheres of the brain and encourages connectivity and brain development. And one of the reasons I'm so interested in this is that I have an adult son who's pretty severely autistic. And I still remember when he was born, I look forward. I have also a beautiful perfectly high functioning, great normal adult daughter. But my son was born. I thought, well, there's my boys. I'm going to be able to take the baseball games and take fishing and all the things I love to do. And unfortunately, sadly, those things were never able to really happen with him. So I became fascinated with neurological development and things like that. So that's where I learned about that. But yeah, the cross hemispherical thing is super good for brain development.
I'd never heard that part before. That is fascinating.
I think it's also, I guess, through you guys, through the giveaway and through connecting with English Coffee on social media, I crossed paths with Chris Hansen, the fly fisherman, and I know that's part of his story and his. I watched his little short film about his, the day I disremembered, and just hearing his sort of return back to memory and healing. And it was, I think there's awful lot of credence to all of these. There's the frequency of organizations that are all using this as a tool to help people. So there's a significant amount of validity to the sport, not as just a fun sport, but a sport that really facilitates some healing for your soul, which is really fascinating to me, utterly fascinating.
Yeah, Chris's story is extremely inspirational, and he's also a great example of someone I know. Had I not done English Coffee, I would have never had the chance to encounter, and we've since become really great friends, although we've never met in person, but we communicate really frequently, and he's been tremendous supporter of English Coffee. A great guy, and yeah, his story is a true inspiration for me.
Actually, I just opened it. I went to the mailbox and it was like Christmas. He had sent me a package of stickers, of some really, really good looking stickers from his stuff. And I was excited to open that up when I saw it.
You like this one, right? Here.
Yeah, just like that. That's it.
I just got the same package.
Yeah, that was awesome.
So. Yeah, it's funny from Anglers Coffee, you guys participate in a lot of giveaways, and you do a lot of connecting with other people, like-minded people, and we've since got to kind of know some of these guys like Chris, and then also the guys from Dads on the Fly. We just met them. We haven't met them face to face, but we've just been chatting with them the last few days on social media. It's just a neat community that we've been able to kind of find through this, and I think you're onto something with combining coffee and fishing. I mean that goes together.
I don't know if there is a better combination personally.
Well, I certainly can't imagine one without the other, but that's personal.
I mean, for me, this side of heaven, there's not much better than sitting by a mountain river with a cup of coffee in hand. And especially around a group of friends. I mean, there's no more richer of a atmosphere than those things all combined together. And
it's kind of, you alluded to earlier there, you can take either one of those as far as you want to go in the pursuit of perfection. I also love to tie flies, and I go to extremes to try to perfect a fly that I know the fish don't care about at all. But for my own, and I can take that as far as I want to go. The same can go with a cup of coffee. The variables that are included in taking coffee, which is grown. I don't know how much people know about the supply chain of coffee, but coffee is largely grown and harvested by farmers in largely third world countries, not exclusively. And you mentioned Brazil earlier, Brad and Brian, and that's That's not exactly a third world country, but largely it's grown by small farmers. And the better the coffee gets, the more care they have to do in producing their product, to the point where most coffee beans are hand-picked. Now, if you can imagine that the millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of coffee beans that are consumed around the world, virtually on a daily basis, it's a huge amount of physical work. And thankfully, to the emergence of the so-called specialty coffee industry, people have been willing to pay more. People are, enjoying better coffee. People are becoming, there's an obvious difference between better coffee and bad coffee. And that's allowed all up and down the supply chain for a little bit more money to be passed around. That's improving the lives of these farmers. And a farmer might have one hillside on his farm where the soil is slightly different or the microclimate is slightly different, and that literally affects the taste, the eventual taste of the coffee. So it's playing around with all those variables just from there, and then when you apply roasting to the process, and then grinding and the different types of brewing, we say you can take it as far as you want to go. And
the rabbit hole goes deep, doesn't it?
It sure does, but as it does with fishing, and so that's. I think that's another reason I'm so intrigued by both of them.
Yeah, Joe, I get the chance to over the past almost 7 years now. The church that I work for, we've been doing work down in Nicaragua, and we helped. There's a farm there that we helped. It's a rehab farm for drug and alcohol rehab, and so I haven't been for a couple of years for obvious reasons. Globally, it's been difficult to travel. But hope to travel down there this summer to go see some of my dear friends down there. They do grow coffee on the farm. It's not as good as some of the stuff that comes from higher elevations than where they are, but it's still not bad at all. And I have seen and been able to be a part of the picking process and experience all that. And they do some really cool stuff down there. And so when I say I love coffee, man, I've been a part of lots of it. So I have a deep appreciation and a love for it for sure.
Well, one of the coffees I'm looking at currently to feature as one of our next artist series coffees is actually from Nicaragua, and it's an amazing coffee. I'll send you some as soon as I can.
Cool, man. Yeah, well, I have a love for that place, and then a love for those people. They are some sweet, sweet people, and it's certainly. I mean, I think next to Haiti is the second most poorest nation in this hemisphere for sure, but hardworking folks, and man, a beautiful place. I mean, the volcanic soil is unbelievable. So I think you could grow anything there. But you're right. All of those variables like acidity, elevation, all of that comes into play on taste of coffee, which is fascinating. Fascinating to me. It's a little more than just a good old cup of truck stop pilot coffee.
Yeah, that's come a long ways. Definitely come a long ways.
Joe, one of the questions we like to ask our guests is, what is your next adventure?
It's a good question. So for virtually the entire month of June, I'm going to be heading out on what I call the first, maybe last annual English coffee fly fishing tour. And I booked a Sprinter camper van, and I'm gonna get in it and head out with somewhat of an agenda and somewhat of a not. And I'm gonna hit I'm gonna start off fishing up in a couple of lakes up on the Blackfoot Indian Reservation in Montana, up in Glacier.
Yeah.
Work my way south. I'm going to spend some time fishing the Bitterroot River where I grew up fishing with my father. I'm going to meet up with one of my older brothers who's going to fish with me as well. So that's going to be some special time. And then I'm going to end up down, not end up, but head from there down to do some Spring Creek fishing near Livingston with a group called Nelson Spring Creek, who are beautiful people who I virtually met, haven't met them in person yet, via another podcast where we kind of shared some space. So that, again, part of the community. And then something I've left out of this is kind of my modern family lifestyle I have, where I was widowed several years ago, and somehow had the fortune of finding another beautiful soulmate in the form of a woman that is somewhat younger than I am, and without necessarily intending it, I now raising a beautiful 6-year-old daughter. And
Wow.
so she and her mom are going to come out and meet me in Missoula. We're going to spend a week on the Blackfoot River, glamping, as they like to say.
Nice.
So that's my next adventure.
That sounds like a fascinating adventure, and I'm very envious. I can't wait to see the reports on Instagram and all the social medias.
Should be a few, and hopefully I can pitch the coffee a little bit along the way. Pick up some fans.
There you go. I see. Looks like in the background there is a little far off, but it looks like some fly tying over there. What's one of your favorite? There it is. That's the tying station. What's one of your favorite flies to tie?
Well, as I mentioned, I kind of tie flies in two categories. One is to catch fish, and the other is to look pretty. They don't necessarily work the same as each other. Lately, I've been trying to tie up flies for this upcoming trip. I've really become a fan of stillwater fishing. There's nothing like a dry fly on a river and a nice pocket, but stillwater fishing, it's totally different. The fish are bigger, stronger, they hit harder, and it's a whole different, it's usually subsurface. Mm-hmm. So I've been working on chironomids lately, which is a larval or pupal stage of emerging flies of all types and primary food source of trout in lakes. Been working on some scuds, and then, some classic dry fly patterns for the area. Some of the old-fashioned ones like Royal Coachman's. I have kind of a side joke. When I was fishing with my dad, he literally fished with 2 different flies, and that was it. It was either a Royal Coachman or one called a sandy mite, which was supposed to replicate the salmon fly hatch of early summer in Montana. And if those flies weren't working, then he was convinced there were no fish in the river. He had absolutely no idea. A nymph never crossed his mind in those days. But I like to try to tie all the classic patterns. I've dabbled a bit with some colorful salmon fly patterns. So I keep myself busy. That's what I can. In the rare spare time I have, I like to hit the bench.
That's awesome.
There you go. That's where there's a beautiful crossover of art and sport is at the fly tying bench, and you're making something, you're creating something to trick this fish into eating it, and then
something with the brain the size of a pea, and yet they
seems to be pretty smart. He's outsmarted me a few times.
Yeah, we also we like to. Somewhat on a monthly basis, we feature a fly tyer on our website. So if there's any fly tyers out there listening who would love to have their favorite fly feature, just shoot us a line. My email address is joe@anglerscoffee.com. I'm always anxious to hear from anybody about anything.
I tell you what, Brian, we need to hook up old Wade Blevins, our pal. That's he ties these. In fact, he just sent me some, Joe. So this is one of those bass crossover guys. Okay. And so he ties these, they're these foam popping bugs. If you can see them on there.
Now, those look like fun.
His dad invented that in the 80s.
Yeah, that's right.
Wow.
And so anyway, he ties them and gives them away.
Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah. So, man, we need to connect you guys, man. That way you could feature it because they're really great down here, especially like if you get ready for that bass fishing little crossover action. Wade's incredible.
Well, yeah, please encourage him to reach out.
Yeah, we've got some fantastic artists that listen to this podcast too. If you ever want to do a bass artist series, we've got some really talented artists who listen.
That would be great as well. We definitely have that on the radar.
Yeah, man, that's cool. We what are some ways? Obviously, I know the ways. We'll link the ways on that people can follow Anglers Coffee. On the show notes in the podcast and on the website, and we'll link anglerscoffee.com and your social medias, and hopefully see some people partake, because I really do enjoy the coffee. I'm not just saying that because you're on here, but I really tried it out and really enjoyed all the different blends. I think recently I got it handy right here because I knew you were going to be on. I got the Caddis blend, a medium roast. Little action's what I'm doing right now, but I've been trying out various roasts, and as a coffee lover, I have really enjoyed the purpose. Obviously, I'm a fly fisherman, and your marketing just got me. I mean, you weren't fishing barbless when that thing had a barb on it, and it was sunk deep into my lip, and it jerked me right out of that water, and it got me. It was good, and so well done, great product. I say that with honesty because we're not making any money off of this. It's just genuine plug for something that we really enjoy.
Neither am I.
That makes three of us. Hey, my wife and I are going camping here in a few weeks on the Appalachian Trail just for a weekend, and I plan on taking the dry dropper with us. It's a fantastic way to carry some really quality coffee with you when you're trying to pack light.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the dry dropper for that reason. The pouches are nitrogen flushed, so they have a pretty amazing shelf life.
Mm-hmm.
They're compostable, although we always encourage people, of course, to pack it out. But
yeah,
the bags are compostable, so they're pretty friendly to the environment. And the coffee in the cup, as I mentioned before, is actually surprisingly great.
Oh, it really is.
Yeah, very convenient way for no equipment required. All you need is hot water. Although the packets can also be used to make a really great cold brew.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't tried that yet but it's coming. Cold brew season's coming up in Mobile as it's starting to heat up.
Yeah, just throw a couple of those bags in some nice clean cold water, throw it in the fridge overnight, and the next day you'll have an amazing cold brew. You can even add a little water to it, dilute it down a little bit, and maybe a little bit of cream and sugar if you like it sweet, and it's incredibly good.
That's great. Well, we certainly have enjoyed this conversation, Joe. Really appreciate you taking some time to join us and share your story and share what the work you guys are doing with Anglers Coffee. We really appreciate it, and our goal is, like we said, to build community amongst fly fishermen and storytellers and outdoorsmen alike, and to expose people to all kinds of different stories. And we're thankful to be able to do that with you today. And we hope this conversation really encourages people to get outdoors, to write their stories down, to share their stories in what we love to call the storied outdoors.
Well, I appreciate the time, and I've enjoyed it as well, guys. And just like to encourage listeners, if they want to reach out for anything, just as Joe at anglerscoffee.com. I love to talk about myself and the business, but we've also been known to be pretty generous with samples to those that ask nicely. And so, I can
attest to that generosity.
Yeah, so we love for people. We like to be known as more than just a pretty bag, and as you've experienced, we want to make sure people know that the stuff inside the bag is the real deal. It's great coffee. And so, take the time to tell my story.
There you go. Well, yeah, we hope people have enjoyed this. If you have, and you're out there, you're listening, you've really enjoyed this, and you know somebody that's a fly fisherman and a coffee connoisseur like me, share this conversation and this story with your friends. Maybe leave us a review, help us grow this conversation in this podcast as we continue to expose these some stories that are untold stories and some that are told over and over again to people all over. We're thankful that you listen. For more information, maybe some extra information about Anglers Coffee and other guests, and photos and all kinds of different stories, maybe even review. We had a review on our website for Anglers Coffee. So for all that different stuff, you can go to www.thestoriedoutdoors.com, and we would love to hear from you on there. You can email us also at thestoriedoutdoors@gmail.com. We would love to hear from you and continue this conversation. We're thankful that people take time to listen.
If you've enjoyed this podcast, please take some time to leave us a review, or better yet, share it with a friend. We hope these stories encourage you to write your own stories and share your own adventures in the storied outdoors.
Brad Hill here. There is no better way to share a story than around a campfire. And if you are in the Mobile Bay area, there is no better place to get firewood than our friends at Mobile Bay Firewood. This is a family-owned business, and I personally love using their easy-to-light, kiln-dried firewood in my fire pit. So use promo code MBFTSO for $15 off of your next order at mobilebayfirewood.com. Longtime friends of the podcast, the Growley Leather Company is a family-owned leather goods company in southern Alabama. All of their leather goods are designed and handcrafted to come alongside you in your daily life, share in your adventures, and reflect your character. Brian and I both enjoy products from Growley Leather. So visit growleyleather.com and use promo code TSO2022 for a 15% discount at checkout. Find you a leather journal and fill it with stories from the storied outdoors.